we have now is Penderecki.
Right.
Needless to say, yes, yes. Now it's one of my favourite avant-garde European composers. He's from Poland,
Mm.
and I've always assumed with a lot of his work that he was a Catholic, or at least was trying to express Catholic themes in his work. And
Yes.
this one is explicitly religious, the entombment of Christ,
Yes.
and the cover art bears that out, and so on. But yeah, it's again, it's another one with a choir, you know, and again, like with the Russian one with Schnittke, it's an overwhelming, overpowering sound, particularly the bass vocals. And I put side one on every so often, and it's just terrifying. What is conveyed by this
Yes.
sound of roaring voices and booming voices is quite it's painful, really, the emotional reach that it's going for with this. Now, Penderecki has obviously done other religious records like the Lucas Passion, and he also made a record based on The Devils by Aldous Huxley, which was the same book that was made into the Ken Russell movie. But he's also done compositions which I would regard as commenting on disasters of the 20th century, put it that way.
Did he do
so
the one about Hiroshima? Is it?
Yes.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Threnody to the victims of Hiroshima, yes, yes. And he's also done one on the concentration camps, and it's also very gloomy and very intense and so on. So in my mind, it's possible to sort of link this with the disaster series, if indeed you want to call it that, that, you know, this is another disaster for humanity, effectively, you know, the crucifixion and the entombment of Christ taking place. That really conveys very powerfully on this record. Yeah, so I love this so much, but weirdly I've got two exact same copies of it. It's because I saw a second copy one day going very cheap in a record fair, and, you know, it was looked unplayed. I just tapped up on it.
Yes, yeah. I don't blame you.
It's a bit crazy. You know, it's one thing to have the same record with a different cover, but to get the exact same record twice over. But
I guess
yeah,
that's one of them might be in better condition, possibly. Just, you know,
possibly, yes, yes. But I know this is the first one I got because of that price sticker, and it comes from a tiny little shop in Waterloo in Lower Marsh in London. I don't think exists anymore, and I can't remember what it was called now. But it was he was a classical music specialist, and there was a very brief period of time when he.
I think I might have been there with you one time, because I remember a shop that just had used classical vinyl, and
yeah,
I remember buying a Roy Harris record, which I've never seen anywhere else, which I still have, and the people in there were very nice. If I'm thinking of the same,
yes,
yeah,
it could be the same place. Yeah, he was certainly very nice. Yes, unlike some record shop owners, very very nice chap who actually he knew something about classical records as well, which a lot of people don't. But yeah, for a brief period, he actually had quite a few avant-garde records in, classical avant-garde, and didn't know how to price them. And he just thought they were worthless, you know, so they were going very cheaply. And that's a mecca for us collectors.
Did you get some Stockhausen cheap?
Maybe not Stockhausen, no, but the odd thing turned up that was, you know, worth taking a punt on, put it that way. Yeah, it would have been nice to get Stockhausen cheap. So they're always expensive.
Yes. Yeah.
But, yeah, so that's Penderecki. Yes, very, very gloomy, very Polish, very Catholic. But this one, it really stands out for the unbearably poignant emotions that it expresses. And
it's the subject matter.
Yeah. Subject matter, I guess, if you're talking about a spiritual experience, it is one of terror, I would say, but a very, very good terror. It's not like a fear of the unknown or a fear of chaos or anything like that, and it's not trying to give you a scare. It's just it's terror before something more powerful than you are, something you don't fully understand.
Yes, yeah. Excellent. Yeah, I think sorry to keep on harping on about the Exorcist soundtrack, but I think it's Penderecki who is on the
okay
soundtrack. Yeah.
Yes, that's quite possible. Yeah. And he's definitely on The Shining. I can tell you that as well. He's used a lot for atmospheric effect.
Yes.
which Kubrick or his filmmakers required. So yeah, I mean, if you just want atmosphere, then Penderecki is going to give you more atmosphere than you can handle. You know, it's more atmosphere than your lungs can breathe. I would say it's you know, your whole room just changes when you put on a Penderecki record. It's just
And I'm sure you're selling it to all the viewers.
Well, I hope so. Yes, yes, yeah, yes, yes. Well, they're you know, not many people know about him. You know, so he's worth collecting. So I mean, what people tend to get for 20th century avant-garde, they're always looking for electronic music, and Penderecki is orchestral and choral. It so happens he did do some early electronic studies in Polish radio, the Polish radio studios, but he's not that well known for it.
No. Well, my next record is a 20th century classical composer and another Catholic, and it's Olivier Messiaen. And this, I have a few records, a few recordings, quite a few on CD, because there's lots and lots of recordings of his compositions. Just a bit of background, he's one of the most influential 20th century composers. And he did experiment later on with some electronic instruments, but that would mainly be, you know, within an orchestral context. And his wife, Yvonne Loriot, played, now what's it called? The Ond Martineau, which was
the Ond Martineau, yeah.
Electronic keyboard. And I think that's used in one of his greatest pieces, the Turangalila Symphony.
Correct.
Yeah, but this is a nice French album, which has this fold out, and the record comes out there. It's on the Calliope label, but I picked this one, a nice picture of a organ here in the back. But these are organ recordings. Messiaen was an organist who, for most of his life, played every Sunday at a church in Paris. But he was also a musical teacher as well, and included in his pupils were Stockhausen, Pierre Boulez, and who else as well? Xenakis, which I didn't know. But this piece that that really I found very powerful, I think even from the very first CD I ever bought of Messiaen's music, is The Ascension. And it's a piece that was written for orchestra initially, but then he transposed it into an organ piece, which is about 20 odd minutes long in 4 parts. And it's about the ascension of Christ after his appearances after the resurrection. So it is, unlike maybe the Penderecki piece, it's not harrowing. It's quite, you know, an optimistic piece of music, and it's an uplifting piece of music as well. But even though it's organ music, it doesn't really bear any resemblance to, you know, what we think of as traditional church organ music, like, you know, Bach or later composers of religious organ music. You know, it's very much 20th century. These great lumps of monolithic chords that, you know, rattle the house as you play them, and especially on this piece, The Ascension, which sounds deceptively simple because it is these big monolithic building chords which totally fit the theme of ascension, of, you know, of rising to heaven. So extremely spiritual music. I'd recommend any Messiaen. He had a long career. Some of his later music is really interesting because he would very interested in, he was classed as an ornithologist as well as a musician, because he was fascinated with bird song, and there's a lot of bird song music in his later music as well. So The Ascension by Olivier Messiaen from the 1930s, so it's an early piece by him, 1932.
Great choice, fantastic.
Yeah,
I happen to have that exact same issue.
right.
Calliope records, really nice. I think I've got the Eternal Church one as well on Calliope. Yes, Les Eternels. Yeah, extraordinary. I'm glad you mentioned about his students, because I last summer I read this book called The Rest Is Noise, which is by Alexander Ross, New Yorker music critic. Yeah. And it's a very accessible history of 20th century composition, global in its reach. And what emerges from that book is that Messiaen was one of the real good guys, a really, really nice fellow. And what also emerges from the book is that Pierre Boulez was a very unpleasant fellow and was a real troublemaker. He wanted to alienate people and, you know, really get the audience angry with his horrible, non-harmonious music, because he was a real hardcore believer in
Yeah.
serialism, 12 tone.
Yes.
Whereas Messiaen, quite the opposite, not only very altruistic, but and one of the things that emerges is he went out of his way to help people. He was very enabling and very encouraging.
Yes.
He never told us, never discouraged his students from doing stuff. Just you know, nobody can say enough good things about Messiaen, and his music is beautiful too. Yes, yes,
Yes, yes, yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
Mm,
Your turn next, Ed.
certainly. Yes,
Yes.
yes. This may not be a surprise. Oh, this is
Oh, yeah.
Hildegard of Bingen.
Yeah.
Hildegard of Bingen. This record called Feather on the Breath of God, sung by Gothic Voices and Emma Kirkby. Came out in 1982 originally, I think. And you know what? This record, I think, has never been out of print. When I was, I mean, I've got a CD of it as well that I picked up in Oxfam not long ago. And tried to find it on Discogs and found to my surprise that there's been issue after reissue of reissue of what I would regard as marginal and, you know, hard to understand early music. But apparently it's really popular. And it seems Abbess Hildegard of Bingen has really made a big hit with today's audience.
Yeah. Well, I remember in the 90s, there was a big surge of interest in Gregorian chant. You know, those CDs that came out in the 90s sold, you know, very, very well. And I think, you know, Hildegard of Bingen ties in with that. It had a broad appeal somehow, which is great, really, that, you know, this medieval music could connect with people in, you know, the 2000s.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
It's, I'd say you would think it's marginal music, but it has reached a lot of people.
Yep. It's long before all the later developments, so it's before Thomas Tallis, say,
Yeah.
and you know, Renaissance church music. So it's incredibly simple. And when you think about it, it's really just notes going up and down on a scale.
Yeah.
What notes they are and the order she puts them in is quite extraordinary. But she has no interest in harmonic development or anything
No.
like that. Which I say that as though I'm a musicologist, and I'm not. But you know, I think I'm understood.
Yeah. So there's no polyphony on there.
No polyphony at all. It's always one voice.
Yeah.
You might get the drone, the continuum. So I think it's a kind of hurdy-gurdy where somebody is grinding in the background, which
Yes.
also adds tremendous atmosphere to it. But it's usually one voice. And if there's more than one voice, they sing exactly the same melody. They don't try and do anything clever with it. So there's no decoration or you know, departing from this very, very simple, pure line of music.
Yes.
So extraordinary stuff. So glad to see it in print and everything. As you can tell, she's also an artist, and also I think you could say she was a polymath of her time, and incredibly well read, and had an understanding of science and physical nature and plant life and animal life. Did a lot of categorization in those areas. So, you know, as I say, a real polymath.
Yes.
And also had these ecstatic visions. And this represents one of them. I think it's quite often saw this circular figure in her visions and didn't really understand what it meant.
Oh.
Which I mentioned because, you know, alone among women mystics, her visions were in fact endorsed by the Pope, and she actually got official recognition from the Vatican to say, that's okay, you're not a heretic, we won't burn you at the stake. You know, you are genuinely seeing something which we recognise as connected to the church.
Yes.
But the other thing I'm going to mention, if I may, is you may not hear it on this particular record, and you may have to hear more songs of Hildegard of Bingen, but there is this strange and strong connection between religious and the erotic. And I mentioned that because you mentioned it with the Missa Luba and that cafe scene in If.
Yes.
And it is not prurient in any way at all. It's a perfect harmonization of ideas. She saw nothing wrong in expressing her faith in erotic terms. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Well,
I think it's
Saint Teresa of Avila. I mean, she wasn't a
mm,
musician, but you know, a saint recognized by the church. A lot of her visions were of, you know, her love for God are expressed in erotic terms, and she was also approved of by the Catholic Church as well.
yeah.
But yeah, interesting in Hildegard's case is that she wrote music, and you know, she produced images as well, and painted. So you know, we have that evidence there. It's very, very interesting. Yeah,
It's fascinating stuff.
Mm.
See, here's another one which has been, dare I say it, I think semi-appropriated by a New Age brigade. I think a
Yeah,
lot of people who like New Age music would also say, oh, if you want something really relaxing, you should listen to Hildegard of Bingen as well.
like that.
And
I think were European band who had hits in the 90s or maybe early 2000s called Enigma, and they had a few hits, but you know, they incorporated, you know, bits of Gregorian chant just to provide a bit of atmosphere, taken completely out of context.
yes, I would say, yeah, I kind of regret it slightly. But there's another side to it which is also interesting, is that she became a kind of feminist icon. You know, I think feminists have clasped Abbess Hildegard to their heart, because she appeared to be independent and strong-minded, and a successful woman at a time when you didn't expect there to be any successful women.
Yeah, because
and so on.
An abbess is quite a title to have. It's
yeah, absolutely, along with all other accomplishments.
Great.
So
I don't have that, but I think I should have a copy of that. I should. I think I have a CD, but I mistakenly bought it because it was one of those ones that does have sort of New Age backing attached to Hildegard's music, and it's okay, but I'd rather have the as it was intended to sound, or as far as we know how it was intended to sound.
Look for anything with Christopher Page. If he's involved, I think it'll be a good interpretation of the music. He was a real serious scholar, and he directed the music. So and Emma Kirkby, of course, has gone on to be a very famous singer in many other contexts. But she's immaculate on this. It's just sheer perfection.
Great.
So yeah, love that record. Love it.
Lovely. My next choice is a band that we've already talked about, so I won't go into too much detail. But I just forked out recently on this box set.
You've got that.
I thought it's quite a good way of getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 albums in a box. But it also has the complete Nosferatu, so that's a double. But I think if I was going to pick out a favourite, and it's possibly because I watched the film again recently, it would be this one.
Aguirre, yes.
I did watch the film again recently. I think this is fairly early on in their repertoire or their recordings. I think it was not sure about the year, but there are some electronics on here as well as acoustic instruments. But wonderful. I mean, most of their records are fantastic, really. But
yeah. The thing that's confusing.
It's very spectral. Spectral is the word I would use, and I'm reading that Florian Fricker had a similar instrument to a mellotron, which I don't know whether he built it himself, but that's used on here, and he called it a choir organ, and it was a mellotron in that it was, you know, tapes activated by keys.
Ah.
But the film is it's quite something, really. It's about the expedition down the Amazon in search of the legendary city of El Dorado. But this music works just brilliantly without having seen the film. And the images on the record look very, very Indian to me. But yeah.
There is an entire Popol Vuh record of purely Indian music, which I think is called Yoga, but he's kind of disowned it. It's not really a Popol Vuh record, and it's a semi-bootleg thing.
Right.
But yeah, the old thing about Aguirre is, I mean, I'm really not sure if this is true, but I think although that record is called Aguirre, none of that music appears in the movie.
Well, some of it does, because that's why I read it recently. Yes. I know
Right,
some.
okay.
I think there's
Yes,
about
yes.
3 pieces which definitely
Yeah,
aren't in the film.
right.
Yeah,
It's very hard to pick all this apart,
that,
and
that, that,
because it'd
that,
be
that sort of Mellotron
yeah.
theme, which reappears a lot in the film, that's on that record. So
Definitely on there, yeah. Okay, I stand corrected. Yes, yeah, it's tricky stuff.
yes,
So, yeah, that box set is out of print, isn't it? How did you get it?
I looked on online, and I know
Yeah.
on for a while on Amazon because a friend bought it for about 60 quid.
Oh,
I think it wasn't selling very well when it came out in 2 years ago, maybe 2019.
yeah.
He bought it
Hmm.
then for about £65,
That's
and
good.
I would really, like it. And I sort of scoured around on the internet. I found it on HMV website in a sale, but it was more than £60. But it wasn't. If you look on Discogs, it's about 130, 140.
Yes.
So I thought, well, it's the postage was free as well, because anything over £25 on HMV. Not that I shop much on HMV, but
No, but yeah.
postage is free. So
Excellent.
quite a good deal, really. Yes.
So that's hmv.com.
Yes.
So don't forget, folks, yes, do all your shopping with hmv.com. Yes.
Sponsorship placement in my videos. Yeah.
Yes, certainly. Yeah. Well, a shop around is, I think, is less of that one, definitely.
Yeah,
But,
there are other websites are available. Yes.
yes. Are those vinyl reissues, are they remastered, or do they sound better, or are they good, in other words? Because, like I say, my SPV CDs are very disappointing to me.
Doesn't say anything about remastering.
Hmm.
Some nice booklets, some nice posters.
It does look tempting, I must admit. Yeah.
Let's see. I think each album does have a poster.
Oh, wow. Lovely glossy insert. That's fantastic.
And there is a booklet as well. But I was just really pleased to have what seems to be the complete Nosferatu.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. It's, buying originals is expensive, and it's all very elusive. You don't know, which bit of the jigsaw you're getting.
Yeah.
Those things. Good for you.
Right.
So I'm sorry, I preempted you on the Popol Vuh thing.
I thought there might be some,
Overlap. Yes.
Overlap. Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Got to compare notes. It'd be hilarious if we both chose the exact same 7 records.
Yes.
There you go.
Your turn.
Right. Okay, what I've got now is Terry Riley.
Mm.
There's a lovely double LP called Persian Surgery Dervish. And this came out on the French Shandar label.
Right.
Yes, and this particular label is, I will say it's quite collectible. I've got black lovely labels on it. I mean, there may be gold labels as well, but yeah, as well as doing this one, this label did, they did Cecil Taylor and Albert Ayler. I think they've done One Sun Ra, maybe.
Right.
Certainly done Cecil Taylor and Albert Ayler, and I think they also did various bits of French progressive rock.
Nice.
Very odd label. Is it Seymour or something like that? Very obscure French prog. There's another weird one with a William Burroughs connection, but I can't remember right now. But yeah, for some reason this came out. Who knows why?
I did nearly choose some Terry Riley. I almost chose some Terry Riley.
It's tempting, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. It's I've never heard a Terry Riley record I didn't like. It's extraordinary. But he is spiritualism, if you want to call it that, apparently derives from this Sufi mystic that he met, who was also influenced on Lamont Young.
Right.
I can't remember the Sufi mystic. Was it Pandit Pran?
The one who plays sitar.
Yeah, no, he's a singer. He's a singer.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yes. I think he's a Sufi mystic fellow called Pandit Pran, and the story that I know was actually told to me by Charlemagne Palestine, who I met. I've interviewed the great Charlemagne Palestine when there was a lot of interest in his work some years ago. and Charlemagne is very approachable, and he loves to talk about stuff. And yeah, apparently Pandit Prannath, he approached Charlemagne Palestine first and said, you know, come and study with me, learn the mystics, the secrets of the Sufi religion, but you have to give up your whole life to me. Yeah. And Charlemagne said, well, I can't do that. Can't give up my whole life. But apparently when he had the exact same conversation with Terry Riley and Lamont Young, he said, yes, you have to give up your lives to me. And they said, yes, we will. So they've devoted their entire life to the study of this Sufi mysticism. But yeah, for some reason, I really don't like Lamont Young as a person or his music either, to be honest with you. But Terry Riley, I absolutely love. I just listen to him for all day.
I think Terry Riley records are quite accessible, really. You know, they're enjoyable.
Yeah, very, very much so. Very much so indeed. And there's a real warmth that comes out of them, a lot of humanity and a lot of depth again. And this one happens to be a solo performance with the, I think a Farfisa organ or some kind of electronic organ, but he would enhance it with tape echo.
Yes.
So we could repeat phrases, and he would do that with a soprano saxophone as well, and lots of loops. But you know, you can tell that he's playing, that he's really entering a trance state and really getting into it. There's no stopping him, and he can just go on and on for hours, it seems. Of course, he has done group work and he has done compositions which can be performed by a large ensemble. In C turned out to be a surprise hit, still performed to this day, from the 1960s, and expressing something about collectivism and 1960s ideals of playing together and harmony and so on. But yeah, you can't beat Terry Riley solo. There's a real kind of vision that shines through, particularly on this record. And it's another one I could have bought twice. I really should have done. It's at a record fair one day when a fellow was offering it to me at a very good price, this record. And I said, well, look, I can't buy that. I mean, I've already got a copy. Because that's what I was like then, you know. I've already got a copy at home, and I can't have another one. I know it's rare and everything. And he said, "Oh, okay. Well, what about?" And then he lowered the price drastically.
Wow!
And I still didn't buy it. I must have been mad. Yeah, it's a real huge mistake.
Yes.
Yeah. I think
awake at night.
Yes, yeah, it does. It does. If only, you know, I could have had 2 copies of Persian Surgeon Services. Yeah, it's on CD now, of course, but these vinyl ones are nice to have.
You know, I think you know, John Fahey, I think credits or dedicates one of his albums to his Swami or guru, but the story is that he wasn't terribly sincere about you know, this Eastern spirituality. The reason why he credited the guru or the Swami was because he fancied the secretary that was working.
That sounds like John Fahey. Yes, yes.
And he would go because he, you know, they would give him free meals and food, and he also fancied the secretary. That's the story. But I think it's Fair Forward Voyager on that album. It says dedicated to my guru, you know, so and so and so and so. But it didn't last very long because I think she wasn't interested in this smelly bearded guy who played the guitar. So.
Well, at least he was honest about it.
Yes, he was quite a curmudgeon, wasn't he, John Fahey?
He does come across that way, yes, certainly, yes. Really walked on a kind of Charles Bukowski of the acoustic guitar.
Yes. Okay, my next record is by a very, very well-known band, the Grateful Dead. But this record in particular, Anthem of the Sun, I nearly picked Aoxa Moxoa as well. This is the Grateful Dead firmly in their psychedelic glory. This is their second album, 1968. But I think what's very powerful about this record and very spiritual is that the way it was put together, you know, it's a collage of live and studio recordings, and especially side one, that's how it's put together. But I think it's an absolute masterpiece, really, of psych music. I mean, there are stories about the recording of this record, and the band definitely wanted to do something more ambitious after their first album, which is fairly conventional. And I think is it Bob Weir was talking about how he wanted to reproduce the sound of thick air. And he got the engineer to record air, silent air in the desert and silent air in the city, and then overlap those two pieces of music. And I think the engineer resigned after that. So it was you know, interesting how this record was put together. But as I think it is a masterpiece. And whatever you say about hippies in San Francisco, I think you can see the Grateful Dead as heirs to you know, the beat writers in a sense, because you know they were, Kerouac and Burroughs were into, you know, disrupting normal narrative in literature. And I think at this stage, I think the Grateful Dead were doing that musically. It was only for a short while, really, because, you know, as we all know, the Grateful Dead went into much more of a sort of country rock direction by the time they recorded American Beauty and Working Men's Dead. But this is the I would say the psychedelic peak as far as studio albums go. There is, as I say, there is some live music spliced in here. A lot of people seem to agree that the Grateful Dead were at their best live, but there's an awful lot of stuff out there, live recordings out there, and I'm not that eager at the moment really to listen to you know, hours and hours of Grateful Dead recordings from 1976 or 1978 or 1985. In a sense, I'd really like to just listen to these again. And I played this again this morning, and it just sounds wonderful. And it is quite a disorientating psychedelic experience almost, just to listen to this record. You know, that it jumps to, but it flows, but it also jumps. It's amazing, really, how they did it. It's not jarring in any way. Especially, you know, the side one music flows, but it is made up of lots of different sections. But also that connection with the Beat Generation. I think it was Jack Kerouac who, other writers at that time used the word beat, meaning, you know, downbeat or being kind of low life. But Jack Kerouac thought of the tag beat as being beatific and visionary. So again, I think that applies to this record, Anthem of the Sun by the Grateful Dead.
Yeah, that is really well put, John. I think that's a beautiful little mini essay in praise of that record. Yeah. And I've never thought of it that way. I mean, I absolutely love that album. But yeah, what an interesting way of assessing it. And I'm sure what the Grateful Dead were trying to do was replicate the acid experience of taking LSD, that kind of flowing and yet interrupted, strange experience, disruptive experience. Yeah, but doing it so well on sound, yes.
Yeah.
And I first heard that on a cassette tape which you lent me, which I think was made by our friend Bob Parker.
I was going to mention that because I remember my first ever hearing of really any San Francisco psychedelic music was on that tape that Bob Parker gave me. I think Love was on there. Great choices of the Grateful Dead. Probably, who else would there be on there? Maybe SRC and some lesser well-known.
Certainly Love, at any rate. The tape was called From SF to LA, wasn't it?
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
From SF to LA, like from New York to LA. But yeah.
So thanks to Bob.
Yeah, thanks to Bob, definitely. Yeah, because that also turned me on to these bands. I never heard Love before that, and yeah, I agree. There's far too many Grateful Dead archive recordings, so-called. I mean, Dick's picks must be up to volume 500 by now or something. There's a tremendous amount of it.
Yeah.
But that psychedelic period is very hard to beat.
Yes.
And yeah, I have heard the Thick Air story. I think it's been on BBC 4. Right. And it did indeed cause a consternation to the engineer.
Yes.
Tremendous amount. Yeah. But it's putting together a record like that. I mean, I'd never made the connection with William Burroughs, but I think that's a very valid point to make.
Yeah.
Because you see, in similar fashion, but nowhere near as good, is that 1970 LP by the Pink Floyd called Echoes.
Yes.
I think it's 1970. Yeah. It's the one with the ear on the cover, anyway.
Oh, Medal. The album's called
Yes,
Medal.
Medal. Medal. I'm sorry. The album's called Medal. Yes,
Yeah.
my mistake. It's Side 2 Echoes is what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
Which, yes, and it's a sidelong track, and I just always assumed it was pieced together from lots of different pieces made in the studio, not mixing live with studio, but certainly layered. But you know, nowhere near as exciting as Anthem of the Sun. Nowhere near as exciting, sound far too laboured, I would say, and pretentious even.
Yes.
Really. Yeah, Anthem of the Sun. I must put that on again. It's what a great record.
It is. Yeah.
You're right. Well, Oxomoxoa is also great. It's also very weird.
I nearly chose that one because I think I'd just pick out those 2 tracks of Saint Stephen and
Yes.
China Cat Sunflower, which are just again, they're so spacious as well. There seems to be air in between the instruments. You can just hear everything so crisply, and I think again that links to the this spiritual theme of it's almost like crystalline, the sound, the psychedelic sound of the Grateful Dead at that time, especially the guitar playing and bass playing of Phil Lesh as well. It's just
spacious is right. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, but people seem to think that I don't know, Grateful Dead are boring or something, but the guitarists had a real light touch, which I think was quite admirable in that early period.
Yeah.
And you mentioning Saint Stephen reminds me as well of those lyrics of Robert Hunter, which I think are another big part of it, which I do very much like. If you really want to look into it, there's an entire blog post about the writing of Saint Stephen, which is fascinating because it's a real riddle. Nobody really knows what it means. It's actually full of dense allusions to all kinds of things, which Robert Hunter may or may not have intended. But you can pick it apart and see all kinds of interesting hidden meanings within it. Yes. And I really like that kind of elaborate construction. And that doesn't come across in the way that the Grateful Dead sing it, but certainly Robert Hunter was a very serious poet, I think, in his work. So good choice.
I don't have any Robert Hunter solo records, but there are some, aren't there? I think around.
Yes, I've got one of them. Tales of the Great Rum Runners, which is quite nice actually. But it's kind of countrified.
Yes.
And he's not the world's greatest singer. He chooses to strum the acoustic guitar and sing, but it's not a bad record. And that particular LP has a lovely cover painting by Rick Griffin, which is very rewarding.
Nice.
But it's rum stuff, certainly. Rum Runners. Yes. Yeah, well, I think we should end it here. I don't think you can probably. I don't think you can top that Grateful Dead assessment. I've just thrown it out there, but I think you win the internet with that one.
Oh, thanks, Ed. No, thank you for taking part in this latest Baggy Hi-Fi video. I'm not sure how long this will be, but I'm sure I don't think it'll need too much editing. Other people might disagree, but yeah, fascinating records. Thanks for showing them. Thanks for talking about them, Ed. This should be uploaded fairly soon, so I'll just end the recording. So thanks everyone for watching this video, and thank you, Ed, and bye for now.
You can bye.